Remember everyone, this man isn't supposed to exist. So here he is engaging in every possible pastime hobby in the city. Oh man, I love these games. Welcome to the very first look back of 2025, featuring Joryu. Very realistic name by the way, and it's time to talk about the Gaiden game. Since it's a new year, I'll explain what these videos are all about for anyone new. These aren't reviews since I'm not trying to convince you of anything positive or negative about the game. They're lookbacks because they are my organic thoughts and my experiences. Whether these thoughts are based, true, or misinterpreted is par for the course. With that said, the format of coverage begins with story, characters, and finishes with the game's functions. The story of Gaiden is quick, simple, and without the usual elaborate twist and turns that one may expect when playing the main series. For a side story type of game in which the constraints were to create a story around Kiryu's adventure during the events of Yakuza 7, the devs did a good job in creating new characters and conflicts that were taking place independent of the main conflict. The few new characters introduced were well developed for a short game, and I did enjoy that they kept the scope of the plot's progression focused towards a new threat rather than on a story of what most players already know, which was the dissolution. What I did enjoy most out of this story was piecing together what Kiryu was doing during Ichiban's adventure. Kiryu gets his wounds treated at the exact same time, at the exact same homeless camp as Nanba is nursing Ichiban, so that was cool. It was also neat to see a new perspective of the dissolution, where we get to see one last Yakuza face-off between old traditional values and legends who are ending an era. You can definitely tell that they ran out of budget, or rather out of time, near the ending. After the dissolution, they glossed over the post-events of Yakuza 7, including Kiryu's face-off against Ichiban and the gang, and they didn't really make a connection as to how Kiryu became acquainted with the Komi Jewel. I found it hard to rationalize these missing sequences, because the only reason Kiryu was able to participate in the dissolution was because of the deal between Tsuruno and the Daidoji boss. Any further external participation from Kiryu would just make no sense, or would need a new motive which was never given. Probably a plot hole, but I also felt that the Daidoji faction never really had any control over Kiryu. It's like they understood that he's a very important asset and they'll threaten to kill him, but they never actually will because they know that he's rational and, most importantly, powerful. Additionally, I'm getting genuinely surprised that the Daidoji didn't ever assassinate Akame, or rather even threaten her. She's a civilian in the end, but she assists Kiryu to the degree of literally road-killing Nishitani. Eventually, she will have placed Joryu's identity, which would make her a threat to the Daidoji. Well, I mean, if Hanawa's okay riding shotgun with her, then I guess we're all good. Surely nothing bad will happen, or any sort of reveal of an independent informant uncovering the identity of a legendary Yakuza. There's also the explained method, or rather, unbelievable explained method of how Shishido managed to safely stab Nishitani's body multiple times not in vital spots, so that his rescue team on standby somewhere inside the burning building would be able to rescue him in time, while Shishido at the same time was escorting Kiryu out of said building without him getting wise to the entire act. That has to be the biggest offender to the plot, but I've heard worse, like rubber bullets. Moving on to the story events and explorable areas, I found that this game has the greatest barrier of entry out of all the Yakuza games. You would need to have played Yakuza Kiwami, Kiwami 2, Yakuza 3, 6, and Like a Dragon to have full context of this game's presentation. Of course, it's not mandatory, but it was fun to see that they made several story and sub-story references related to the multiple prior Yakuza games. Moving on to the story events and explorable areas, I found that this game has the greatest barrier of entry out of all the Yakuza games. You would need to have played Yakuza Kiwami, Kiwami 2, Yakuza 3, 6, and Like a Dragon to have full context on the game's presentation. Of course, it's not mandatory, but it was fun to see that they made several story and sub-story references related to multiple prior Yakuza games. The castle was a surprisingly detailed area, despite being a small linear barge. There's hotel suites if you look up. The lounge below has gambling entertainment accompanying it. The Fighters Lounge contains all your clan members that you've recruited, which was a pretty cool detail for me, and I enjoyed the whole presentation of an underground barge, even though it's laughably unbelievable that with all those fancy lights, it stays incognito from all the coast patrols. In regards to the conclusion, I really did enjoy the whole theme of accepting responsibility. After all, it's not something that criminals would ever do, and Shishido embodies that rebellious tradition to embolden one last stand from the Yakuza, both Tojo and Omi, to rise up against what would seem to be their legendary role models that are ending their reign. Kiryu and the others also challenge this view, as nothing lasts forever, and you have to move on and keep living. It's quite a difficult and serious decision for our protagonists involved too. Kiryu and the others both have their own individual attachments and reasons as to why they stick around with the Yakuza. But even so, they are all prepared to move on because the world is changing. There's quite an abundance of new characters, but I only want to talk about a couple outstanding ones. Akame is a minor character and there's not really too much to talk about. Her primary existence is for introducing systems and the castle, and of course, road-killing Nishitani. Hanawa was wasted potential in my opinion, especially after they dropped an ambiguous clue that he knew Kiryu since the events of Yakuza 5. I feel that he should have converted to Kiryu's side faster after he saved him from the Omi the first time. Hanawa is apparently important to Kiryu, and it just felt weird that after you save him once again from Tsuruno and the Daidoji, he kind of just disappears from the story until the finale. I think it would have been more compelling to have both him and Kiryu defect from the Daidoji and stay in hiding with Akame. Hanawa could have even been killed off to give Kiryu motivation to help the dissolution due to his past knowledge of his life. I just hope Hanawa returns in a future game because as of now, he's the only memorable member of the Daidoji faction besides the two villains that got recruited, but I seriously doubt we'll never see them again. Next is in fact one of these villains, and it's Nishitani number 3. Oh man, if Hanawa is wasted potential, then Nishitani was, well, he just didn't have enough screen time. So I want to make sure I get his backstory right. He's not related to the Nishitani in Yakuza 0. He does, however, adopt similar personality traits and has origins to the Jingwon Mafia, so he does have a personal reason to hold a grudge against Kiryu. But I felt that the game never expanded more on his character due to how little he was on screen. He also gets his ass handed to him twice, which really diminished his power perception and intimidation before the finale. Overall, I just wanted more of Nishitani, and unfortunately, we just didn't get it. Shishido is next, and I liked him the most at the end because of his symbolism. Shishido is meant to be compared to Kiryu when he first started his journey in the 80s. His approach is to make it to the top through any means, whereas Kiryu's approach was to see if living a Yakuza life could be fulfilling. In the final battle, Shishido rallies all the disgruntled Yakuza families who cling to the same mindset. This clash of ideology behind the fight was very cinematic, and I do like how he appears unstoppable, being able to push through the might of both Majima and Saishima as if he's no longer a person, but the force and voice of all the Yakuza who won't change as the world around them does. His appearance is meant to fool you as well. He isn't just brawn and intimidation, but rather deceptive and calculating. Tsuruno is the last character I want to discuss, and honestly the underdog of this entire game. He was my favorite among the new cast. He's very grounded and realistic. Also, a good leader who develops genuine understanding to Kiryu's position and past. I felt that he related to him more than Hanawa, understanding that the current state of the Yakuza has changed since its formation and that things can't always continue as they once were. He was a great supporting character who was developed fantastically, and I hope we see more of him given he's the captain to Watase. Finally, we've got Gaiden type things to do in the Gaiden game. Most if not everything is tied to the Akame network, which was convenient for tracking purposes. Right away, I will point out some lack of quality of life which we should have had, taxi teleportation to the castle, and ability to access all Akame functions without visiting, well, Akame. I found it alright that all the sub-stories came from her, given that Kiryu is in hiding and she is an informant, so it fits the setting. I just feel that the seamlessness of accessing certain functions could have been improved by putting a direct taxi to Akame's room. The stroll and patrol missions were quick and easy, which made the city feel lived, and if you keep updated with side content as you progress the main story, the network level will perfectly cap out as you complete the game, making you all set for premium adventure. There's only one big system in the game, and that is the Colosseum. They put a lot of effort into making 40 playable characters, with 3 of them being from Judgment. Now honestly, if you want to win effectively, Joryu is still your best fighter. However, it is cool to play Hell Team Rumble as a completely new character. Finally, you have your classic completion metrics from minigames around town that you know well and through if you've played the other titles. There's a couple new arcade games and the introduction of ROM games which are further beyond my years. Mahjong is surprisingly tame in this title, but you'll have to grind through Pocket Circuit all over again, which makes its long return since Yakuza 0. You don't need too much luck with this completion list, so if you got spare time, just go for it. And that's all I have to say for Like a Dragon Gaiden. I hope this title gives confidence to RGG that they can pursue short story game formats and recognize success in more modest game packages. They experimented with this type of approach with the Majima saga all the way back in Kiwami 2, and it worked out well in my opinion. I always look forward to these type of games, so I'll see you back with Yagami and the gang in Lost Judgment.